A little bit of gorillas there. Kids with votes. Let's talk about kids with votes. Should Canada lower the voting age to 16 years old? Let me know what you think on the text line, 514-790-0800, about the voting age. Now, that question is gaining traction as youth advocates and politicians push to give teenagers a voice in the federal elections. Supporters argue it would boost civic engagement and reflect democratic values, while critics question whether it would actually increase voter turnout. Let's talk about this a little bit more. Jaden Braves is on the line, Chief Executive Officer of Young Politicians of Canada. Jaden, welcome to the program.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
I have it on good authority. You're 16 years old. Is that correct?
Indeed it is.
So you just want to vote. This is what all of this is about. Just wait a couple of years, Jaden. You're almost there.
Well, that's not just what it's about. It's about making sure our future is protected by those that are at the key stakeholder, the real stakeholders of the future. But that's just aside for a second. Let's talk about the Constitution, for example. Every Canadian citizen has the right to vote. I don't have the right to vote. Mm-hmm. Many other members of the Young Politicians of Canada don't necessarily agree that youth in Canada should have the right to vote under 18 years old. That's fine, but we're looking at the Constitution right now. And so our organization works to bring young voices to democracy. Some of those young voices, as myself, want to be heard within the democratic space. It's very much aligned to have an organization that wants youth voice and democracy, which we do in a number of ways, not just by voting. We advocate, we go to Parliament Hill, and we call on a lot of important issues, which we've actually made a lot of progress on. But voting is a constitutional right and something that 16-year-olds should not be gatekept from because society deems we're not sufficient.
So, Jaden, listen, I'm going to tell you, just hearing you answer that first question, or just talk here off the top, you sound 38. You don't sound 16. I'm going to be honest. You sound like an adult who knows what they're talking about, right? And so, I'm taken aback just about how you present your case here. But I'll throw this at you. I mean, there has to be an age at the end of the day. I mean, would you say, it's in the Constitution, so if a 6-year-old wants to vote, they should vote. Like, do you think there should be a limit at the end of the day somewhere? And how do you draw the line at what age is appropriate or not?
So first of all, I think it's interesting that you mentioned my relation to being a well-spoken adult, because at the end of the day, there's nothing that should differentiate someone my age from a well-spoken adult who understands political theory and context, because those are things we should be teaching in schools on the day-to-day, preparing high school students to go into the world, to pay taxes, to be a part of a system and a society in Canada where we take care of one another and we understand government systems. Now, yes, absolutely. I am just 16 years old, and that's maybe too young to participate, or maybe it's too old. So if we look at a 15-year-old, for example, where's the limitation? 15-year-old is not in grade 11, so they can't legally emancipate themselves at 16 years old, which you can when you are 16. You're not paying taxes typically when you're under the age of 16, as the general Canadian employment factor. Around 50% of 16-year-olds will have jobs. 16-year-olds are taking public transit. 16-year-olds are preparing for their futures and next steps after high school, after post-secondary, whether they're going into a trade, whether they're going into a university or college or a cégep. Those are really, really important factors that you have the ability to make those decisions on when you're 16. Ontario is the only province in Canada that has mandated civic literacy and a civic curriculum. That needs to change urgently. And with a federal standard of making sure every single province has regulations around how we ensure each student is educated and understands the civic system and government system sufficiently, we'll have a far more educated population, which we can trust is going to be able to make that decision at the ballot at 16 years old. That could be at a high school level. That could be in their high schools. After they take the civic class, they could go in and vote in their local areas, make it a topic of conversation, make it a topic of healthy debate, as we do as Canadians. Or it could be when you look at an issue at the day-to-day, when we realize public transport's not working properly or our schools are underfunded, and that means we can take that decision to the ballot box as a 16-year-old and protect our future.
Jaden Braves is with us. He's Chief Executive Officer of Young Politicians of Canada, wants to see the legal voting age lowered to 16, and boy, is he ever making a case for it. Jaden, how'd you get involved in all this? Like, it seems to me that maybe you were attracted to politics at a very young age. Can you tell me your path here?
Yeah, for sure. So I was particularly involved in democracy. It was around 10 years old, the 2019 federal election, when I realized my parents' voting did not necessarily agree with mine, and me having wonderful parents that didn't want to shove their political ideology down my throat gave me the ability to explore. I actually got really involved in the Green Party and environmental work, and I became a federal councillor when I was 14 with the party. Before I realized some of my different philosophical perspectives, but also primarily the extraordinary importance of Canadians coming together from different parties and finding mutual solutions to big problems. And that's what Young Politicians of Canada is. So I really invested my time about a year and a half ago in building this organization where individuals who might not agree with one another, who might not see eye to eye on everything and have philosophical differences, can look at problems that we experience the same way and find the best of both worlds in their solutions. And that's the most Canadian thing that we can do, finding valuable solutions that we might not necessarily agree on, but finding that outcome that we debate and we have rigorous discussion on in order to find the conclusion.
Jaden, it's interesting, because when I've seen mock elections held in high school, for instance, and they release the results, local school boards do that at times, and they release the results. It's interesting, at times it's like 80% of the kids, they voted for the Green Party. And then we know in a federal election, the actual tally may be, 2, 3, or 4%, right? So there seems to be a wide gap between what someone thinks at age 15 versus what they think when they, get into their 20s and 30s and that kind of thing. Why do you think there's such a disparity there? Why is it when the mock election comes in, the Green Party does so well, and then they're knocked out of the debates last night because they can't even get to 4%?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a lot of idealism at a young age, and to look at the fundamental principles of what these parties stand for, the NDP, the Greens, sometimes Liberals, they look really good on paper. When you're an adult and you see perspectives and maybe a larger scheme with reference to democratic institutions that we don't teach significantly in high school, like the United Nations or like the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and I don't mean diplomats in suits, I mean actual structures, UN Nairobi, UN Rome, UN Geneva, that control the standards of the things that we use, which many listeners might not even know exist and are branches of the UN because we don't teach that in our every single day secondary school or CEGEP. Those are the issues that I think when people start to wake up to as adults, they might swing different economically, and that brings conservatism or that brings fundamental Western democratic values that we might be reminded of, which make us more conservative. Whereas at a younger age, you're looking at the ideal principles. Yes, I want a clean environment that will protect us when I wake up. And when I'm older, I don't want to breathe smoke and have have to wear a gas mask outside because climate change is getting so bad. That's something that's very true. Simultaneously, I also realize that absolute pacifism doesn't necessarily win the race when you have countries like the United States or like China or Russia that are causing potential diplomatic global threats that will break these institutions that have existed since the Second World War. Those are the realizations that you might come to after high school. But if we have better civic literacy, we won't have to come up with those on our own.
Jaden, listen, I look forward to seeing you in politics sooner than later. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Jaden Braves, Chief Executive Officer of Young Politicians of Canada. Let me know what you think. Did Jaden make the case that 16 should be the new age?